Good evening.
Scooters.
What's that? Ready? Oh, there we are.
Okay.
Good, we're on. Okay, all right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. I would like to welcome you to the City Council meeting. I'd like to call the regular City Council meeting to order, Monday, May 20th, 2024, 7 o'clock, City Council Chambers, 191 Cabot Street. Ms. Dixon, please call the roll.
Bowen. Crowley.
Here.
Feldman. Houseman. Rotundo. Spang. St. Hilaire. Sweeney. And Flowers.
Council Spang, please do the Pledge of Allegiance for us. Of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. So this evening, we have a couple presentations, and then we'll also have comments from citizens. Mind of two public hearings, one at 7:45, and then the other at 8 o'clock, and then we'll continue and conduct the business that we need to as far as the council goes, and we'll break for some committee work, and then come back and finish up the evening. So I'd like to first start out with the first presentation and invite Lisa Chandler from the engineering department with some department project updates. Good evening.
For the city of Beverly. I was asked to come and provide some project updates concerning paving, how the paving process works, kind of where we are in the season, given that it's fairly early in construction season. With me, I have Eric Barber, who is the Assistant Commissioner of Public Works, and he'll also be giving kind of an introduction to where we are and how we've gotten here. Let me just start by saying that, so we started, it is now the middle of May. We started the middle of March with this year's paving season. We have 13 streets slated to be paved this year. Additionally, we are planning on paving the Council on Aging parking lot. There are a number of other places that we are looking to add sidewalks, that sidewalks don't currently exist. But just as a general form of how we do things in engineering, when we do paving, we don't just pave the road. We do sidewalks, curbing, we either remove or replace trees if they're needed. We upgrade water services so that we don't have to dig the road up again. We coordinate with all of the various utility companies so that we don't have to dig the road up again. And then when we impose what we call a 5-year moratorium, so we ask that no road be paved or be ripped up within 5 years, or if the PCI rating is still high, whichever comes first. Sometimes roads deteriorate faster than we thought. Sometimes they stay in great shape. It really is luck of the draw. Sometimes it's the wear pattern of how they're traveled. Sometimes it's just actually the construction, but we do have a 5-year moratorium. When we slate roads to be paved, we hand out a general flyer to all the residents. We ask that they think about if any of their services need to be upgraded, because they will have a fee imposed if they need to dig up later. Whether or not they want to add gas service, if it's available to them, whether or not they have any projects that they need planned. We try to give them as much of a heads up as we can. In years past, sometimes we've been able to give certain residents plenty of time to plan. Sometimes it's like the week before we're out there to pave. It really has not been a great system. We take a little bit of time to figure out which roads are going to be paved, and by the time we start in the season, it's almost July sometimes. And we're trying to fit everything in. We are locally known to be paving almost till Christmas. We are one of the few communities that do that. It's just based on the length of our season and how many crews that we can have working at any given time. Like I said, we have 13 streets slated this year. That is quite a lot for us. Each of them involve a fair number of work from our own city crews as well as the contractors we have working for us. I'm actually going to have Eric talk about how we're trying things differently this year, and then we'll get into some more details about what you're going to see on the streets coming up.
Thank you, and good evening. So Lisa touched upon some pretty important concepts there. The fact that coordination takes a long time with all of our paving projects. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving pieces, and a lot of people involved. The sooner we can get to developing a plan, the better. So where we're going with all of this is to develop a rolling 3-year plan. In your hands tonight, I've provided you with a report. This is a 20-page report. It's my anticipation that this is the one and only time you're going to receive this on paper. We are actually creating a tracking tool for all of our projects. We're going to present a little bit more later on this exact topic. But these 20 sheets represent an update to our current paving progress. And the very top one is an update on a 3-year paving plan. Throughout the course of the year, and as we've worked together, both with the administration, the council, we've taken a lot of notes from residents, and we've reconciled a lot of those notes into what we believe is a cohesive plan that meets a whole bunch of objectives. And the critical part is, if we can plan a couple years in advance, well, then we can get the gas company and the utility companies ahead of us. We can do all of our utility upgrades ahead of time. We can better forecast what the cost of our program's going to be, so we can give our administration and the finance director that understanding and hopefully develop a plan that's cohesive from the top to the bottom. And even more so, where Lisa had mentioned that a lot of times there are impacts on the residents, it's even better when we can give them a notice ahead of time. Not just a couple of weeks, not just a couple of months, but hopefully a year or more, so that they can plan ahead with their own projects at home. So anyhow, that's just a real brief introduction to this report. I encourage you to look through it. I encourage you to ask questions. I'm going to say I apologize in advance for the format. It's not complete, so it's not disjointed, but it's not how I want it to be. I'm going to continue to refine this report and work on it to deliver you the information that you need. But in a nutshell, it should tell you what's going on, fairly reasonable real-time updates as much as possible, and we're going to be actively updating this as the projects continue throughout the season. So you'll get much more on this in the weeks and months to come.
Thanks, Eric. Like I said, there's 13 streets currently slated to be paved this year. We are currently only working on one. You may have seen crews out on Sawyer Road right now. They are working kind of in coordination with also finishing up the work in front of the old Briscoe School, so that when that building is open, everything is kind of put together and buttoned up. Going from there, we will get a second sidewalk crew in so that we can kind of divide and conquer some of these streets, but almost every street on the list this year requires work from the city water shop to replace water services, some in varying degrees than others, but there's quite a bit of work to be done. So we are trying to get through it as efficiently as possible. In addition to what we have slated for just our paving, there is also the Bridge Street reconstruction project, which is going on, which is also utilizing work from our water shop. So we're spread kind of across the city. We are paving at least one street in every ward this year. That's another thing that we've been trying to get better at, is spreading it evenly across the city where we can. And then other than that, I mean, I'm happy to answer any specific questions about paving or road construction or anything you guys may have. But just know that what you see now is going to continue, and we hope that as the paving plan evolves and that we're getting more efficient and understanding better how it works. What you did see on the screen luckily, we don't have any of that, but varying levels of red obviously are bad. So you can see kind of color-coded across the city where it is. This data is 3 years old at this point. We are expecting the freshest download of our data this week. Once we get that data, we can vet it against what we currently have slated for the paving plan. Just make sure what we assumed were the worst streets in need of greatest repair continue to be the worst streets in greatest repair. What we have seen actually in just knowing, even just driving around, some streets do appear to be deteriorating more rapidly than we would have thought. So even though they might appear as a decently numbered street in this kind of platform, when you drive it, it certainly doesn't seem that way. So we're waiting for the latest data just to kind of confirm what we believe to be true. There are a certain number of streets that I think are going to kind of shift within the plan. Like I said, we've currently forecasted out 3 years. So we have a tentative plan, which I believe Mayor has emailed each of you individually for your wards, what we anticipate happening for calendar years 25, 26, and 27. Some of you provided input, which is great and very helpful. We've taken that into account while formulating the plan. And like I said, once we get the latest download of data and we know better where we sit, we're looking to have that published and available for the public within a month. I'm hoping that the numbers don't throw too big monkey wrenches into it, but I do know that there's a handful of streets that I think are going to wind up sliding back and forth within the years. And I'm going to sit here so this doesn't turn off again, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good. Well, thank you for all the information. I'll open it up if any counselors have any questions, comments. Counselor Spain.
Thank you, and I just wanted to thank you both for all the work that you're doing on this and getting the data and the updates to us. And my only question, you mentioned that when you get the information and you're able to check the assumptions you've made with the current ratings for the roads, it is the intent that the 3-year plan would be posted online, so if residents have questions, they could go and check that?
Yes, yeah, we just didn't want to publish it and then get data and then realize that we were wrong and have to change it again.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And if people want to know how their road is rated, will the PCI data be online too, or this map or any version of it?
I have to check. I'm not sure if the PCI data is available on the online GIS for the public. I believe that it is. If not, you always could just call the office and we're happy to give the data for any street. It will be listed for all of the streets within the paving plan though, so that's a metric that we use to track.
Yeah, thanks.
Good, you're welcome. Yes, sir. Councilor St. Hilaire.
Yeah, I also just wanted to thank the administration. This is very responsive to, I think, what you've heard us asking for the last couple of years. Road and sidewalks are the #1 thing we hear about every single day, so to have this type of information available to people is a huge benefit, and just would ask as you move forward, continue to communicate updates, because I'm sure it's going to have to be flexible and change over time. So thank you very much.
Any other comments? No? Good. Thank you for being here and doing the presentation, and we look forward to further updates.
No problem. Thank you all.
Awesome. I'd also, before I introduce the mayor for his update, I would just be remiss if I didn't thank the folks sitting on the right as far as with the administration for joining us this evening as we go through, and appreciate everybody being here. Next up will be Mayor Cahill and his team to update on capital projects and plans. I know this is going to be the inaugural first one, and I know there's more to come as far as updates coming down the road, so we'll work with that. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. President. How are you?
Very well. Looking forward to the first of many capital project updates from yourself and
absolutely.
your team.
Well, it's good to see everybody. Couple just framing notes. We've got about 16 PowerPoint slides cutting across projects large and small. Obviously, opportunity for you folks to comment, ask questions after. I'll be speaking, and then Eric Barber will be speaking. We've got with us tonight to help with Q&A, we've got Bruce Stoigard, Director of Community Services and Parks and Recreations, as well as, I think, and Eric and Lisa, who you both talked with. Now, we have several other folks here from the administration, but I think in terms of the departmental oversight of different projects, you'll hear from those folks. And then the other piece is Mr. Barber will be following me, and he'll be just walking you through briefly the reporting tool that we're going to use to start pushing out information to you folks as counselors and for sharing out to the community. Our goal is to come before you quarterly with this type of a presentation, and monthly put out updates kind of across the whole realm of projects. And then we'll get into a rhythm with that. And so when we come forward quarterly, there'll be a monthly update at that time for that month. So that's the goal. And Eric will walk you through that a bit more. So several categories, starting with youth center. So just to look at this together, construction documents is where we are right now. The goal is to bid the construction work for the project by July. With construction, we'll be awarding that this fall and looking at about a 12 to 14-month construction period. So the goal is early fall 25 to be able to open the new McPherson Youth Center to our young folks. Budget estimate, as you can see, our goal and our commitment is to manage to the budget we've had to work with. The federal earmark of $1 million that Congressman Moulton, in working together with our team, was able to secure is a huge help in that regard. So you can see there are $5.2 million in ARPA funding dedicated here. That leaves us a little bit of cushion with ARPA as we need it, but our goal is to not need it here so that we can turn it back to use for other things between now and December 31st. The state earmark that we've had for the last year plus and the federal earmark together with the ARPA are meant to cover the budget as it's proposed. And keeping in mind, it's a much smaller number than it would be in a larger project, but there is an owner's contingency involved in that 6.4 current budget estimate that we fully intend to manage to not spend. So hopefully it'll come in a little bit less than that as well. City Hall project, we've talked about this fairly recently. We've gone back with our team and asked them to come back in with new design. I shouldn't say new design, but a redesign. As you all remember, about a year ago, they put a number of designs in front of us. It turned out that, the designs that would more, I don't know what the right word is, the designs that would really take this and make it a very different building were not realistic financially. We do have some really interesting and I think high quality work that Feingold, the architect, has done over the last couple of months that has us keeping the center corridor in the current City Hall building, that has us making significant improvements to the office spaces and suites within the different departments, would have this council chambers remain where it is, would create roughly 30, I think we're looking at in the 36,000, I'm looking over to the team here, 36,000 square feet in total. We got about 24,000 in this building, and you add in the former police station addition next door, and we'll have sufficient office space for everyone here as well as for health and inspectional services. So it'll be exciting to bring them back in when the project's done. We will be adding an HVAC system to this building. As you know, there is not one on the first and second floors. The one on this floor it does okay, but it's not what it can be. So that'll be an improvement here. The proposal at present calls for an air source heat pump heating and cooling system. There'll be many more bathrooms than are here today. Each bathroom will be a gender-neutral single single sink stall and walking bathroom. There'll be several more meeting spaces. The council will gain back the second subcommittee room here on this floor, and there also will be, for the first time, a significant size meeting space on the first floor. That would be in the police station, former police station wing of the building. There'll be 2 elevators when it comes forward. So there's a lot there in the design. Our goal, obviously, is to meet the programmatic needs of all of our city employees and the public. Come back to you folks by late summer, early fall of this year with a proposal and a request for funding. But I do believe that we'll be asking Colliers and Feingold to come in one more time before we come back and ask for funding. So if we can fit that in, in the near future, we want to try to do that so you can hear more from them, some of the details. So Moraine Farm, obviously, you all remember well that we collectively worked through this when trustees came to us and asked for help from the city to purchase the 66-acre Project Adventure parcel site within their Greater Moraine Farm campus. And the goal was at that time to create a true trustees of reservation, full-size reservation for the public at large. In us embracing that concept with our Community Preservation Committee, with you folks, and working through just how could the $1 million in taxpayer money that they were asking us to bring to the table create real value for residents in the city. A number of things that are listed there as public benefits from the use of local CPA funds, which, as we all know, are tax dollars. First and foremost was to take our community garden that has been at Cole Street for many years and relocate that to Moraine Farm. We have had roughly 60-ish plots at Cole Street. As it's laid out at Moraine Farm, there are 90 plots. And at present, most of the farmers at Cole Street chose to come over, and then many additional folks have signed up. And so they've been planting and will be, over the next several weeks. We'll have a ribbon cutting June 6th at 1 p.m. I think that's more for us and for trustees, for the gardeners. They're already out there. I think they kind of, in their own minds, cut the ribbon when they first put shovel in ground or hoe in ground. Other benefits in the memorandum of agreement that we had with trustees include connecting all the J.C. Phillips Preserve trails to Moraine Farm with cleanup and improvement to the trails and signage. The Conan Street entrance, if you don't really know, and hopefully you do, but if you haven't really seen it, as you come up Conan Street from North Beverly Plaza toward the traffic light at Cabot and Conan, it's on the right. It's a beautiful old gated entrance that's been neglected for a long time. So they've been working to clean that up, have just begun with that. The parking, there's significant parking they've been able to create for both the gardeners as well as for visitors to the reservation from all over when it opens. And as part of the agreement with us, they agreed to sign 10 of those spaces in that area, the parking area, as Beverly resident parking only. And then the conservation restriction that we as a community, I think it's our Concom is going to hold it, is awaiting final state approval. We've had a lot of back and forth with the state on that over about a year and a half, and we're hopeful that the language is complete and final, and soon we'll have that approval. We have not made payment to trustees yet, and at the point of the conservation restriction becoming formalized and approved by the state, that's the point at which we'll write the check to them. It's money that will help them to get us to the starting line for the reservation opening to the general public. Simon Street, the 2 pocket parks, as you also remember well, they were 2 former houses that burned down 55, 60 years ago. They've been vacant lots for a long time. We collectively purchased them, and so now they are officially City of Beverly Public Parks. We worked with the neighborhood extensively, and roughly the idea was a kind of a gathering place, meeting place for picnics on one parcel, and then a more of a playground on the other. So you can see 14 Simon, what has been constructed, fence, turf, gravel benches, picnic tables, trees, and then some raised planters, pollinator-friendly or planned. That's more the gathering spot. And then 34 Simon, we have ordered and are waiting on, or I guess we have, and it's about installing playground equipment, picnic tables, benches, some turf, gravel trees, and you can see our goal is to have that completed by beginning of early summer. Birch Plains, these are all great success stories for all of us. Birch Plains pickleball courts, as you know, we had a lengthy conversation that I think was, an example of really great community conversation and input, and some legitimate concerns raised by abutting neighbors, I think we're able to address well by both locating, first off, building 4 pickleball courts and not more. Second, by locating them directly behind the bathroom building, so that helps prevent some of the noise from carrying over to the neighborhood next door on Cabot and Trask. And then the soundproofing material, the sound dampening, I shouldn't say proofing, sound dampening material that we're able to order and install. The courts have been operational since November. There's been a lot of play out there, a lot of people having a good time, and the neighbors have been very reassured that it hasn't been the concern that some had feared. We have had both prior to the sound dampening equipment install and then more recently, I guess the weekend before last, we've had our health department take noise readings at various points near the courts and then in the neighborhood. And those all have been, again, reassuring to the community, to the neighbors. So I think that's it's going well. And the other piece to this is we've been attentive to the parking needs. We were able to formalize parking inside the gate in front of the bathroom building, as well as make improvements in how we direct and channel cars in the Birch Plains playing fields parking lot, because we know the real pressure point will be weekend mornings and afternoons in the fall and spring when there are soccer and lacrosse games, as well as the pickleball community looking to get out. Everybody wants to be out there at the same time and enjoying the good weather in the outdoors. So thus far, what we've seen for parking in the Birch Plains lot has been encouraging. I think the work our engineering and public services departments have done to really kind of delineate and direct parking over there are helpful. You folks have in front of you, I think tonight for final action, hopefully the request we've made to prohibit parking from the corner of Cabot Street, Route 97, on the right-hand side going in, just between there and the driveway into the bathroom building on that side. And then on the other side, coming out from the airport on that side of the street, to prohibit parking in its entirety there. Just not safe to have parking on both sides of the street at that point. So, and I think that things are going well, and we're just going to keep an eye on all of it as we go. Holcroft, a combination of funding streams, funding sources, including a successful park grant, and we've got Ms. Barrett is here, Mr. Doigan, a number of folks who have worked really hard on that funding, and there are other pieces of funding that have come from various sources. We all know that, and now you can look up there and see just about to get started really on construction work. There is a plan to meet with neighbors one more time before the summer with some of this, well identified, and then just to check with them on other things. Basketball court, picnic pavilion, playground equipment, embankment slide. I'm going to let Mr. Doig answer a question on that if you've got one. Picnic tables, benches, lighting, upgraded play area, and new gardens, all in the offing over the next year. And the tennis courts at both Kimball Haskell Park, which we know as Cove Playground, and Cahill Park, which we know as Centerville Playground, in the front of the campus of the school. So there's a lot of words there, but the bottom line is both projects are underway. This has been a long path, and if you remember me telling you, there was a point where we tried to get state funding for this, and we were told eventually by the state, pull those tennis courts out because they're not going to engender support at the state level. They're from parts of town that they don't identify as needing their support. So we've had to utilize our own funding sources to do this. And you can see that the old court and fencing has already been removed. Grading has been ongoing. New pavement, paint and nets will be installed. The Cove courts need a new retaining wall, so that getting getting that finalized is in process. But new pavement, painted nets, new fencing, et cetera. So the goal is that they'll both be ready for the public's enjoyment by mid-July of this summer. And this is a catch-all. Gillis Park on Goat Hill, Femino Park, which remind me, that's behind the old Millery, behind the old Millery, no, I'm sorry, that's right over here, between Cabot and Lothrop. Dick's Park and the Farms, all have improvements coming, as you can see there. And then you've heard us talk about the AED effort. I need to say that Kurt and Kelly Anderson, neighbors of ours, started a nonprofit. Just fantastic work they're doing. They've brought a lot of people to the table to fundraise and to donate and to get AEDs in place. We've put money forward, and so the combination of city money, nonprofit, corporate, some of our own youth sports and adult sports have done their own pitching in and fundraising. So altogether, you can see the goal is, well, you can see 3 units already installed, 15 more purchased, 4 more to be purchased after that. So that's a total of 22 with a goal of 37. I'm looking at Mr. Doig. So 22 will be installed and available for use at some point this year, and we're looking to provide them for the other 15 outdoor parks. AEDs, if somebody has a sudden heart attack, or if there's I think we've all learned this along the way too, sometimes this is caused by a contact injury, whether it's a ball, whether it's a shoulder, whatever happens. The fact that an AED be on site and available has been proven to save lives in the moment, so the goal is to, as quickly as we can get there, have all 37 parks with their own AEDs set up. Lynch Park, we got a grant through CZM. We've been working on this. We need to complete the grant work by June 30th. In the meantime, we have submitted an application for seawall repairs. The grant was really to look at vulnerabilities that exist and that will be exacerbated with sea level rise, both storm surge kind of flooding as well as what to worry about and be concerned with kind of typical high tide sea level in the future. So there's a lot of data there. We've had a good amount of public outreach. We had a very successful survey that was several hundred responses. We had a walk around Lynch Park one Saturday. We had another day where our partners came in and presented some scenarios. There are several scenarios they presented to the public a couple Saturdays ago, and they're all pretty jarring in terms of how we might look at our everyday use of the park in the future and how we might need to anticipate and allow for the ocean to occupy parts of the park in order that we can continue to enjoy most of it. So there's a lot there to work through still, and I don't think we need to do more work as a community to help people to understand and kind of sit with the different options of how to address really the worsening storm surge problems that are going to be there going forward. One thing that it wasn't clear to me before this process was the fact that 100+ years ago, a decent square footage over at Lynch Park, when you think of Woodbury Beach and the current parking lot and the part of the lawn that's closest to there, 100+ years ago, that was salt marsh. So even back then, there was more ocean water in the park than there is today. So there's a lot to sort through with this. We know that some combination of hardening, meaning seawall repair and improvements, as well as some allowance for water that needs to go somewhere to come into the park, to be held and then to come back out, is probably the long-term set of answers. But there's work to do still. Aubert Park. If you remember a year ago, following on some initial grant funding that helped us identify some of the challenges at Aubert with erosion, last year we went after a grant. We didn't get that grant. That grant was to move forward as quickly as possible the design and permitting for the preferred treatments, kind of nailing down those preferred treatments and then moving the permitting. When we didn't get that grant last fall, we came to you immediately, and you folks were very supportive in approving some free cash money to do what that grant would have done this year, so we don't lose further time. So we are in the process of trying to get to submitting a number of permit applications, both locally and to state agencies, which will take some time, but the process has been moving forward very well. As you can see, tomorrow evening, there's an update meeting for the community, which will be held at Ayersville Side School, 6:30 to 8 p.m. Part of it is to share out, part of it is to take input in as our consultants get ready to go forward with permit applications. And now we're to a couple of our challenges over in the Brimble Ave 128 area. As you know, we submitted a MassWorks grant application last year. We won that grant, I think it was 800-ish thousand, 750,000, to move the design of a roundabout at Brimble Ave and Dunham Road through to completion of design. One of our goals, as soon as we secured that money, was to take our consulting architectural firm, VHB, and lock them in to get us through design as quickly as possible and to get us to where we can apply for another MassWorks grant this year for construction. So we'll be putting that grant application in next month. If we secure the funding there, it will be for an amount sufficient to construct the roundabout. And that would be, with design finishing up, the goal would be to break ground on that in 2025, and it would be about a year and a half's worth of construction at that point. And along the same lines, on the other side of Route 128 Brimble Avenue Phase 2, you folks approved money last year to move design forward on an interchange proposal that was for the first time going to be more centered between the existing interchanges. So that puts it at the top of the hill, really up by where Mastronzi's properties are on both sides of the highway. In working with MassDOT on this, we've dug in deeper with them, and some of the same concerns and challenges that they've raised to the city for 25 years keep coming back. And one is that it's going to be really hard to get Federal Highway to approve a full interchange between two current interchanges that are so close together. And that's been the challenge, one of the two big challenges all along. Another one is federal and state funding for an interchange and then to block off a part of the roadway that it would access. So all along, we've been talking about trying to dead end Dunham Road for the residents and take the commercial industrial out of the mix. So these things are still unclear. We have talked with folks at MassDOT together with our engineering consulting firm on this project, and we have been exploring whether an overpass that's not a full interchange, which kind of goes back to the 30-year-ago concept, may be more supportable by the federal and state partners. And so we're looking with them at that. We'll have more information soon, I believe. And the goal is that if that is more likely to get full embrace by the federal folks especially, but also by MassDOT, and the good thing is that we have not spent any of the money that you folks approved yet. We kind of finished with the initial funding, and with this question having been raised back in, I think it was February, we've been really kind of pushing to get an answer from the state and feds on this. So if the overpass becomes the better path, we've got the money to hit it with and move that design. So we'll need to keep updating you as well as the neighborhood. And Councilor Feldman, I know we've talked about trying to get back with the neighbors before summer to bring them up to speed if they're not tuning in tonight or following on to tonight. EV charging infrastructure. So we are soon going to be installing 2 fast charging stations, which means 4 cars can plug in the lower lot, so that 11 Pond Street is upper and lower, right? It's one behind the Spear Post on Judson and behind the Cabot Lodge. So down there in the lower lot, we'll be putting those, and then you can see that we also have installed, I think that one's a dual port slow charger at the GIR hall, so there'll be overnight charging capability for our inspectional services EVs that they're using for their staff to go out and do their work throughout the day. And let me turn it over to Mr. Barber, who is going to share, as I said, some information on the enterprise asset management tool that we all have been supportive of for the last couple of years now. And I've got to say this, incredible work has been done by Mr. Barber and by others at engineering and DPS and in other departments to get this tool up and running. This, I think, is finally going to give us what we've been looking for, both through the investment in the asset management system and as a tool for us to be able to share out information to keep you as counselors who are trying to do this job in addition, most of you in addition to a full-time job and other responsibilities, to keep you in the know on project as we're moving forward and to make it easier for us to all share out information to our constituents. Thanks.
Mr. Barber, just before you begin, I just want to make you aware, I may have to pause you at 7:45 to open a public hearing,
Fair enough.
okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem. So in a very short amount of time, the mayor just delivered you a huge amount of information on a small number of projects. And you got to imagine, if we were trying to take the information that's available for each one of the projects and deliver that every single day, we could literally all, as an administration, sit on the phone or type emails and send out that communication all day, every day. But in a world where, as project managers or as lead workers, if we could spend 5 minutes a day just updating a project, over the course of time, we can create a really incredible account of that project. And not only do we get the benefit of that today, but I'm a big believer in legacy. We're only the stewards of this organization today, but it's our responsibility to actually leave the future of the organization in good hands. So by creating a system that creates this legacy and actually gives visibility to all of our projects, not only for the now, but into the future, I feel as though that's our responsibility, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So you may have noticed that as we went through the slide deck, there were actually serial numbers on a number of those projects. It started with a 23 or a 24. Well, that's because we're tracking on those projects. EAM, or Enterprise Asset Management, is the software platform that we're using to track these projects. And each and every project has a serial number, and we're going to use that as a reporting tool and a communication tool between us as an organization, as we push up through the organization, as we push down, and as we branch out to the general public. As a general overview, again, enterprise asset management, I'm going to introduce this with the E being one of the most important things that we need to think about, which is the enterprise piece. Enterprise is basically sitting overarching on the entire organization. So we need to imagine this system as something that we can leverage, pushing all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. We are trying to break down all of the silos, so all of our vertical and horizontal silos from each and every level of government and across all different departments. So this should help us with visibility both in the vertical and in the horizontal plane. This will create improved efficiencies through developing workflow, setting expectations, developing roles and responsibilities. And again, this documentation leaves legacy and an account of our projects really with the relevant documents tied to them for the future of our community. So right now, and these are just the projects we've had the time to load into this system, we have 80 active projects. And to be fair, it's mostly projects tracked through engineering and the Department of Public Services. We're starting to work with the other departments as time prevails and as we have the ability to onboard other departments to get their projects logged. documented and serialized in this. Again, we're going to have project managers, project leads, and a number of different statuses that we can track on. And one of the best parts about this program is our ability to produce reports. It's no good to any of us if we can't produce the right information to the right people at the right time. And so that's what we're striving towards, is creating the operating procedures to make sure that this system supports the business needs and gives us the ability to deliver this information in an appropriate time and in an appropriate fashion. So as we move through
I
this.
hold you just on that for just a minute.
Yes.
I just need to open this public hearing and recess it. I'd like to open the 7:45 public hearing, order number 135, National Grid Petition Plan, 306-00267.
Ordered that the City of Beverly, or that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, May 20th, 2024 at 7:45 at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, relative to National Grid number 306-00267, Goat Hill Lane, to install 105 feet plus or minus of 2 to 4 PVC conduits. And this was published Monday, May 13th.
I recommend we recess this until 8:15. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0. So we will recess that, and we'll go back to you. I may have to do the same thing at 8 o'clock.
I will be much quicker than 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
So just to finalize that thought, I encourage you as we go through this process together. It's really a journey. We're learning together. We're figuring out the most efficient way for communication. So please help me with feedback. We can tailor this tool to exactly what we need for the organization, for the business needs, and to meet our communication needs. So as we move forward, you will see changes. It just is what it is today. We're going to be updating statuses. We're going to be updating priorities. Just to give you a flavor for some of the things that are built in right now, you've seen some of the projects. Again, I mentioned that we have 80 active projects. To just give you some of the key features that are built into this, you're seeing a quick snapshot of my dashboard, what we operate off of. Your printed reports are going to look a little bit different, but it has all of the same information. In this particular case, you're going to get a project name. The projects are going to all have a serial number. Right now, they're intended to be tied to the calendar year. That's how the system runs. You're going to have status dates. There will be project start dates and anticipated end dates and due dates, so you should be able to see approximately what duration projects are both slated to start and what season they should start in or what year they should start in. Maybe it's a capital project that you've approved, but we're not ready to start it. You should see when it is programmed. You should also see when the anticipated end date or due date is, so you can use that as a communication tool with your constituents. Furthermore, we have different work types. So for example, maybe it's a capital project, or in other words, I have a number of different sort of work order-based types in here, reactive maintenance or predictive maintenance. Maybe we have minor projects or outside contractors that are doing work. We need to track those statuses so we can report accurately and keep tabs on what type of work we're doing. There's categories, and the mayor was actually delivering you a number of different categories, whether it fell into parks and playgrounds or infrastructure or our facilities. We're tracking all of our projects based on those categories. We're also tracking on problems, because if things come up and we find that our assets are failing because of one reason or another, we want to be able to develop metrics to measure against that, measure our performance. And as we go through the course of time, we're going to learn a lot by looking at our business and what we learn from those metrics. Furthermore, project manager and project lead is going to be a really important piece of information, so that you know who the project manager is, who generally has the oversight of the project, but the project lead is going to be the individual who's driving the day-to-day. And it's the project manager and the project lead's responsibility to keep these records up to date, so that they're, for the most part, up to date either real-time or at minimum on a weekly basis, and that's the expectation we're going to be setting with our workforce. Beyond that, crews and departments, that's another way we're going to be able to slice and dice all this information, so that we know what departments have the ball, what departments have the lead roles. Beyond all that, you're always worried about the financial aspects of a project. So we're going to be delivering to you the appropriations tied to the project, what the appropriated amount was. You should have some basic understanding of where we are financially. We're going to have, at the end of this, all of our tracking tools that should tie back to Munis, which is our financial software. So we're really trying to create a system that's robust and it completes the picture. But furthermore, the icing on the cake is almost everything we're doing here ties directly to assets. As a community, we are responsible for the quality and condition of our assets, the operational capacity of our assets, and the level of service that we're trying to deliver. So by us tracking on unique assets, we can actually track the life of those assets and what money we apply to them. So as we move forward and try to develop a capital plan, we're going to have all that information at our fingertips, and we're going to be able to make some quality data-driven decisions. But where I'm going with this is even our capital projects are tied directly to those assets, and they're what's called geocoded. So in a perfect world, if we geocode all of our projects, we can actually see on a map where all these activities are taking place, and we can look for things like conflicts, or maybe there's scheduling conflicts, or we always struggle with things like, the routes that, when we're detouring and all that stuff. So the further and further we get with all of this, the better and better picture we're going to have, the better we're going to have the ability to communicate, and we should be able to put these tools at your fingertips to the best of our ability. So that's it in a nutshell. That's our goals and our hopes for the next 6 to 12 months. Again, I encourage you to work with us diligently and give us some feedback as we develop this tool. It will go a long way in our ability to communicate and to create a system that's really beneficial to the whole. So that's EAM. Thanks.
Thank you for all that. I appreciate the information. It's nice to see some more updates and upgrades that we have for projects and stuff that are happening. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything else to add before I open it to questions for the council? Okay, so I'd like to open it up for any questions as far as the council goes. Councilor Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I have 2 questions, but I will start by thanking you, Mayor, and your team for putting this information together. It's very helpful for us as councilors to receive this level of detail in a well-presented format. So I want to express my gratitude for that information. To start, and starting with the enterprise asset management software, I apologize if I missed this piece of the presentation, but is there any timeline at this point for when councilors may be able to access this information?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So your first delivery, we actually have been sort of sprinkling this in with some of our prior communications. We've been testing the water a little bit for the past, maybe 100 and some odd weeks as an engineering department. We've given you the ward by ward. For the past few weeks, we've actually been putting a 20-page sample in the back of it to give you just a quick little taste of what this report's going to look like. And as we've been moving forward, we've been further refining it. To truly answer your question, you will start to see a monthly update of all of the projects, and we're hoping that if there are things that are time sensitive or really need that critical level of information to be presented, that we can kick a report out as needed at basically any time.
Okay, and just sticking on that for a minute then. So the plan would be more so for there to be a packaged update to councilors as opposed to me as a councilor hopping on my computer and interacting with any of this information?
Correct. That would be the goals for now at minimum, making sure that we have a format that you can access and, the ability to have at least a PDF record. Should be searchable, should have the ability to keyword search through it. So if we're formatting it all the right way, you'll have the information quickly accessible at your fingertips.
Okay. That's great. I certainly appreciate that in line with this theme of getting more information to the council. My second question, which is for you, Mr. Mayor, there was one big project that I didn't notice in this presentation, which is the Central Fire Station. And I am wondering at this time if you have, even if they're general updates for the council about the progress of that work and what we would expect to see, if any, in terms of requests for additional funding in the coming months.
So, 1, Commissioner Collins isn't here tonight. 2, help me out, because I was doing a lot of things a week and a half ago. Did we get you a follow-up second email summary of where we were
in terms of design, and,
Right.
which was helpful information, so
Right.
that if there's no more updates at this time, then so be it. But I know in thinking about the larger financial picture, I would assume there, at some point, will need to be a request for supplemental funding to complete that work. So that's
I
something
agree.
that-
So now that you've reassured me that I did forward on that email from Commissioner Collins about a week and a half ago, he expects more information mid-May on.
Okay.
Right? And so you remember from that email that looking to do the roof and window work initially, or the roof, and the doors are another issue, and the HVAC's another issue, and so there are different pieces to that. And yes, it will require more funding than has already been made available. So why don't we get an update on that to you folks at the June 3rd meeting?
Okay.
I think we could have more to say by then, and it certainly will roll into this, this format moving forward.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
Sure, thanks.
That's it for me, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Mr. St. Hilaire.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
You're welcome.
So I also wanted to thank the administration and the mayor. Again, this is something I think the council has been requesting and asking for, so I appreciate the update. I guess a couple thoughts. One is some sort of a summary report would be helpful if, in terms of feedback. It sounds like it's something that's still in development, if that's a thought for you, Mr. Barber, moving forward. And then secondly, I don't know if tonight was intended to be a comprehensive list of all the projects, but there was a small project in Beverly Farms, the cemetery fence. I don't need an update, but, at some point, are we gonna see this for every project, or how would we? Thank you, how do we get
Mr.
updates?
President, Counselor, I have an update.
Beautiful.
Hang on just a second, I want to make sure, it might be that information there. Over there? So I'm sorry, I have an update on a number of CPA-funded projects, that being one, and here we are. Okay. Both Phase 1 and 2 combined, they were funded at different points. They were both put out to bid early May. So
Great.
hopefully we'll be, I don't know what the date is on opening bids, but should be soon, and hopefully that work will get started in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you, Mayor, appreciate it.
Anybody else have questions? Yes, Ms. Bowen?
Thank you. I also want to add my thanks and my enthusiasm for the updates coming out of the new enterprise asset management system, and looking forward to just seeing the level of communication that that's going to enable going forward. I think looking through or hearing the updates tonight, I've jotted down a number of questions that I'll follow up on. I hope to hear from other folks who are watching, additional questions they have that we can all follow up on. And as we look to future monthly and quarterly updates, would echo the value of having sort of a cover dashboard of what's in progress, what's, there are no updates on, what's coming up. It sounds like the enterprise asset management tool will make that easier so that that's not as heavy a lift. So that in theory, we could even, see the update in advance as part of our packet, be able to use the time live to ask those questions rather than be following up asking questions sort of behind the scenes after the fact. I had one. Sorry, running through my notes. As we start to get into the flow and are more caught up on projects, would love to also incorporate in some of these updates sort of where we are in the capital planning process. So some of the things that sit in the capital expenditure plan, like the school roofs that are coming up, the water main replacement project that's coming up, that we know are sort of in the mix. Sort of where they are in the planning timeline would also be helpful, because the recap of highlights of things that we're seeing happen is great, and I think a lot to celebrate tonight. Some projects that people are really excited about and that we'll all benefit from. But also that sort of look ahead of what else is coming and where the decision point's going to be on those things. So I don't know if there are any to highlight right now that are timely, but also would just leave that as we start to figure out this process as something that I think would be helpful.
Can I hold you up just for 1 minute, Mr. Mayor? I'd just like to, okay, thank you. We'll stall this. I'd like to open the 8 o'clock public hearing for order number 145, National Grid Petition, Plan 309533605.
Ordered that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, May 20th, 2024, at 8 p.m. at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, relative to National Grid Plan 309533605, Railroad Ave, to upsize 25 feet of existing conduit from 2 inches to 3 inches, running from existing HH number 252 at 47 Railroad Ave, and this was published Monday, May 13th.
So I'd like to recess this public hearing until 8:30. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Mayor?
Thanks, Mr. President. And then to Councilor Bowen, the input, thank you for the input and for all of you, because we'll be taking notes, we'll be trying to make adjustments as we can. To the question about the capital plan and numbers and timing, I intentionally did not ask Mr. Ailes to present tonight. He's been before you a lot and will be again in coming weeks and in the middle of budget. I think when we do our next quarterly, it'll probably be an appropriate and advantageous time to do some updating of where we are with capital. In fact, it'll likely be around about the same time that we'll be coming forward with the request to approve a project budget for City Hall. So it's only, very timely that us being able to just update you some really mid-year, midstream on the capital plan will be helpful. Mm-hmm.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I think that would be great and probably makes sense in terms of timing. And I think it may also be on the planning and design side, not just the financing side. So if, for example, some of these projects are advancing through decision-making or initial brainstorming, we are now getting to see some of those project updates. There's a planning team has been pulled together. There's initial thinking about timelines. I think on particularly the large projects, knowing when those things are starting to happen can be helpful for us to be able to clue in residents who might be interested or have expertise in different areas, and just for us to be able to answer questions about how far out some of that planning is happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good, thanks.
Councilor Rotundo?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Bob, a quick question. I know we talked about just a small sampling of what has been sort of accomplished midway. How many projects are actually out there? And maybe you don't have the answer for us right now, but how many projects are you managing as a city, as well as at some point getting the money that's already been appropriated for a lot of these projects? Where are those standing?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is projects by definition are kind of in the eye of the beholder. At this point, we're kind of trying to develop what the actual definition of a project is. Generally speaking, it's something that's more substantial than a day-to-day or operational work order, could theoretically have a name associated with it. Maybe there's special appropriations, special funding. Maybe it came from a grant opportunity or something like that. So quite honestly, just to get started, we're developing what is the definition of a project. Beyond all of that, I don't think we have a real complete answer on the exact number of projects because each and every task associated with projects takes a life of its own. I'll give you just a couple of quick examples. We have a whole bunch of sewer projects that we've been working on in our sanitary sewer. Within those individualized projects, there's probably 10 different task items. Each one of those task items theoretically becomes its own project, and we're trying to identify them that way so that if each one of those projects has its own specific details associated with it, that again becomes part of the documentation, becomes part of the communication tool, and that then has a life of its own. So today it's 80. I can tell you tomorrow it's 120. But we're working to build the system, and we're trying to identify all of the projects as they come to light. And as we go through all of our lists, I have lists, the administration has lists, planning department has lists. We're compiling as much as we can as we build this out to try to build as complete a picture as possible. But it's really hard to say at this point. So that's the project side. In terms of projects that have appropriations, capital tied to it, everything is in a different status in its life cycle. Some projects are, some projects are fairly mature. We're in construction, maybe close to completion. Other projects are in design. Other projects just haven't gotten started yet. So that's part of the status and part of what we're identifying as we go through this process. And as a whole, because in stating the obvious, we all have limited resources. We all have limitations to how much we can actually physically get done in any given time. So the key is to create priorities and to start to identify which projects have a higher priority versus another. And there could be a number of factors that weigh into it. But as we get smarter about the projects, as we lay them all out and we start to develop a hierarchy in the priorities, we'll drive that process. And again, as an administration, as a council, as a general community, and through each one of the departments, we're gonna have to make some hard decisions together as to what we take on, what comes first, what comes next, and what we let burn. And that's the case for projects, that's the case for our day-to-day operations. That's pretty much, you could take it from top to bottom with that mentality. So I'd be lying if I told you we have a complete picture on everything. But what I can tell you and what I can definitively say, we're gonna figure it out, because that's what we're striving towards. And the more and more we put this together, the more and more we're gonna learn.
Thanks, Mr. Barber. If I could just kind of cap that. When last we met, there were about 80 projects entered into the system. I'm looking to be comprehensive. I want everything in there, right? With each project, there is a project manager designated and a lead person reporting to the project manager. So we've had conversations about really who should be the kind of universe of project managers. Clearly, Ms. Chandler as city engineer, Mr. Barber as assistant commissioner of DPS, and Commissioner Collins are three project managers. And the question then becomes, okay, who are the leads? Foreman in DPS, other engineers within the engineering department. Anything that involves construction management is most appropriately handled within those two departments, right? So the work is being done, the projects are being managed in terms of the coordination, the formalization for sharing out. We're trying to make sure that those two categories of project manager and lead on the project, reporting to the project manager, are consistently understood. Is that helpful?
Sure.
Yep, thanks.
Also, thank you.
Councilor Houseman?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Yeah, I guess a couple, two or three different questions, maybe starting with Mr. Barber, if I may.
He'll listen, then he'll get up. He'll listen here, then he'll get up.
Okay. So first of all, the council is very familiar, I'll just speak for myself, with your enthusiasm for the work that you do, and I think this is a terrific step in the right direction of using this software to keep track of project management. I guess for me, the overarching purpose of the software is, or maybe I should ask you, flip it around. I view the purpose is not simply communication, because communication for us as a council informs our oversight and our decision-making when decisions are made. But ultimately, the purpose, as I see it, is to actually manage a project to meet certain deadlines and bring them to completion in a timely manner. In what way or what kind of assurance would you give that the communication tools will improve project management so that they move along in a way that Central Fire Station, just for, as an example, has not?
So, in a nutshell, there are a number of inefficiencies built in systems that are not formalized. Like, for example, each and every one of us has an email. Each and every one of us has a cell phone. Each and every one of us has text messages. If you're going to take input from 44,000 residents, a whole city council, whole entire administration, all my work staff, and think that we can manage all of that through text, email, phone calls, the reality is those technologies have a finite use, because then it would require me to take that information and dispatch it to other people who are involved. However, if we're all to manage one system that sits across the enterprise as a whole, the fact that I entered the information in my 5 minutes right there gives everybody else that has access to that information the ability to leverage it to their knowledge and to their ability to make the decisions. So I guess to get started, I'm going to go as far as to say if I could save 5 minutes a day, 100, 150 times across a workforce, multiply that out over the course of the days and weeks and months that prevail, I can only hope to think that we're gaining efficiencies just right there. Not to mention the fact that we're only as good as the information that we have from the past. We have a lot of reports, we have a lot of documentation, things like we have 100+ years of engineering studies, of plans, all the things that we use from the technical side to make our decisions now. We need that at our fingertips. So as we move forward, I'm going to have the ability to leverage this system to actually gain the access to that information, send it to our consultants, send it to our vendors, and not reinvent the wheel and have to search for that stuff moving forward. So as we move forward, there's a whole document management piece of this that's going to give us visibility and access to all the records that we use on a daily basis. So that's another whole aspect. Beyond all of this, I'm going to go as far as to say this is not just a tracking tool for our projects, but it's actually a work order system. All the Q alert and Q send messages that come through our city portal actually land in this system. And not only now are we vetting that, but we have the access in our EAM asset management software. So as we move forward and we get out of a reactive maintenance and into a preventative or even predictive maintenance program, we're going to gain efficiencies on that end of it too, so that we're not chasing our tail, so that our assets hopefully last longer into the future, and we're spending less time on things that should have a prolonged life. So this is, the project management piece of this is a very, very small piece of an asset management plan. And the software is just one tool that we're going to use. So if I'm telling you that it's a silver bullet for the project management, that's not true. But it's the formalization of process procedure, setting expectations, working within a framework, and getting the discipline we need as an organization. We're going to gain incredible efficiencies very fast. And I'd love to deliver this to you in 6 months and see if I can put my money where my mouth is.
So I appreciate that, and I think it is, as cause of celebration, that you are where we are right now, and the work that your department is doing is falling into place. To try to stay with just one example to make it sort of like a case study, if you will, how do you envision if we had this information, this system up and running a year and a half ago, or whatever it was when we approved the Central Fire Station appropriation? How would this system, if we'd had it then, change the outcome that we have now, which was we are a long way down the road and still there's no bricks pointed, no windows and so forth?
Yep, and I understand your viewpoint and, maybe a little bit of skepticism, and that's well understood and deserved. But at the same time, I can tell you there's been a lot of activity that's going on behind the scenes, that these projects are much more complicated in many ways than you'd understand on a day-to-day. You don't feel the pressure of reaching out to vendors and trying to get quotes and scopes of work with budgets tied to them, and, how long it takes to get responses from those vendors, and what we need to do with work with qualified vendors that, we actually trust or even have the ability to procure services from. So, that particular example, I can tell you, Mr. Collins has worked diligently and every single day to try to get answers from people that at times aren't responsive. Couple that with the fact that in the middle of the process, the building code changed. And as he got into the process, the entire project had to be redesigned to meet the current building code. So, there are a ton of outside factors that if you're not in the loop on the information from the outside, you're gonna think that nothing's happening or nothing's advancing, but quite the contrary. Things are advancing. It's just a process, and it takes a while to get it there. So, it's not going to be perfect. There are projects that are going to take a long time for various reasons. But bottom line is, there's only so much we can do to move everything forward. So, beyond that, if we're able to use it, you can't manage what you don't measure, right? Maybe moving forward, we're able to look at this, and I'm able to look at everybody and say, you know what, we're doing our best. I don't know what more we can do. Maybe we need more help, or maybe we need different resources. How am I supposed to ask you for that and advocate it if I'm not even giving you a picture of to measure by?
Mr. Barber, I'm going to stop you right there for just a minute. I need to reopen the Order 135, and I'm going to recess that public hearing recommend till 8:45.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 8-0. Go ahead. Thank you, sir.
So if I may just follow up on that then?
Please.
So, I think as this software is, and sort of the way you conceive of how it could be a useful tool, can work. Take, for example, the question of the building code changing midstream. Would something like that come out in one of these reports so that the council can see it's not that it's sitting on a shelf gathering dust?
I think that's critical information.
There's a reason why what's going on, so that we can appreciate and help follow along as you track
Correct.
what's going on.
That would be the anticipation for how we would use it.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, hopefully we've lost a lot of money on where we thought we were going to be on Central Fire Station, and hopefully a process like this will enable us to address and mitigate those kind of situations again.
If I could, Counsel, I just want to say, I'm not sure we've lost any money at the fire station. I think your point that these more regular reports are going to help you folks be apprised and up to date on where things are at, absolutely, yes. And that'll be better for all of us. But I think you understand from the 2 emails that I've been able to forward you in recent weeks from Commissioner Collins that have laid out the work that's been done. I don't really believe that ultimately we've lost time or lost value of money. I think the process, as Mr. Barber explained a bit of it, has been what it's been, and I think it's been of necessity. These reports are certainly going to help answer questions before maybe you need to ask them. I mean, I think my hope is that this monthly update will be meaningful and real, and it'll just keep everybody kind of much more real time with each other.
Sure.
So.
While you're here, Mayor, if I may, because I have one more question for
Sure.
Barber. It does seem to me that, I know Mr. Perry has recommended it, and I think we'll see as time goes on the degree to which this process it both informs and improves the management of projects. But I think it is very much worth looking at whether or not the engineering department needs, for at least maybe on a consulting basis for some of the larger capital projects, just a standalone, capital project manager that would supplement and work with the engineering department. That's an observation, or maybe, I'm not sure it's exactly a suggestion, but I can certainly see the potential for that kind of role being helpful in the process.
You mean city staff?
No, not at all, not at all.
I think, I think it's a fair point.
Yeah, thank you. One other follow-up question with Mr. Barber. So one of the things that in my questioning and sort of trying to work through these issues as a counselor, one of the things I've been looking for, and I think what you presented comes pretty close, but I want to sort of, you and I haven't communicated directly on it, so I want to just share this and see what your kind of response is. One of the things I've been particularly interested in seeing is what I call like benchmarks 3 months ahead, sort of like what Councilor Bowen was referring to, as well as benchmarks behind, so that in any given report, we can say, oh, we were anticipating X to happen by a certain date. We made it, great, here are our next set, or we didn't make it and here's why, so that we understand. Do you conceptualize something like that, benchmarks to measure with?
I love that.
As part of,
I love that. And to me, I'm calling that key dates, key and notable dates.
Yeah, whatever the
So as we move
yeah.
forward, the anticipation would be as we learn about key notable dates, that we key them into the system. It has its standalone field so that it's separate from the rest of the dialogue and the updates so that you can see those dates. And we'll always have the ability to refer back to them. So as long as we key them in, as we learn about these key and notable dates and punch them in, we'll be able to refer back to those. I love that, and I think that's an important part of the business.
Great, so that's a comment and suggestion.
Yep.
A request, whatever you want to
Yep,
call it.
noted, and we're doing it.
Yeah, great. And then I think I'll leave it at that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the council? No? Well, Mr. Mayor and your team, thank you very much for this first presentation, and we definitely look forward to the monthly updates and quarterly continued discussions. So thank you very much. What I'd like to do, we have a public hearing coming at 8:30. We have some time before then. I would like to start working on the comments by the citizens. And we allow 3 each evening, up to 5 minutes. And the first one I would like is Patricia Callan, 40 Jordan Street. If you could just please say your name and address for the record.
Come on, Bridge.
And you have up to 5 minutes to address the council, just understanding this is just you addressing us. There's no communication back and forth.
Yep, yep.
We're just here to listen and take notes and go from
I got
there.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our names are Bridget, Cora, you take that off, and Patricia Callan. We live at 40 Jordan Street. And Bridget?
Israel is killing a bunch of people in Palestine. Over 35,000 people have been killed so far, and over 13,000 of them were kids. America keeps funding Israel, and I think we should stop. Imagine how you would feel if you lived in Palestine.
By not doing anything to stop Israel, we are supporting it because we are giving them money each time we pay our taxes. City councils in other cities have passed resolutions saying they do not support the genocide and demand for a ceasefire. I believe that Beverly should pass a resolution saying we do not support the killing.
I don't want to insult my very intelligent and adorable kids, but if an 8 and 11-year-old can understand the situation, I don't think it's too complicated or nuanced for our city officials. I think you understand the gravity of the situation, but most of you believe that the plight of the Palestinians is somehow outside your purview, and that it's important for you to stay in your lane. And I guess I just don't buy that. I'm a teacher, and when one of my students comes to school in the morning hungry, I don't say, well, that's not my lane, it's the parent's job to feed their child. I give the kid a granola bar, and I bet you would too. I'll bet when your elderly neighbor is buried in snow after a big storm, You don't look at it and say to yourself, well, that's their driveway. They should find their own way out, right? You fire up your snow blower and you go over there and you dig them out. I'm sure you do. You also have stepped outside your lane in your official capacity. For example, just like a couple meetings ago, we opened with a resolution to wish someone a happy birthday, which I presume to be a pretty unusual use of the city council's time. But you recognized that a life lived fully to 100 years is an extraordinary moment, and one worth recognizing. You didn't look upon this milestone and say, well, he's not my grandpa, it's not my job to wish him anything. No, you took a couple of minutes to recognize the extraordinary and momentous occasion of 100 years of life. It's not exactly city business, but it's important because life is precious. And it was easy for all of you and all of us to recognize that. I would argue that the loss of life is important too. That the loss of over 35,000 lives requires our immediate recognition and action. The loss of future 100th birthdays, 10th birthdays, first birthdays has to matter to us. Even if the neighbors suffering these losses aren't literally next door, even if the problem is bigger than a snow-covered driveway and our ability to affect change is relatively limited, we have to step outside our lanes. You know what, forget that. There are no lanes. My daughters have lived their whole lives in Beverly, and they love it here, just as the dead and dying children of Gaza loved their homes. If our family was suddenly forced to leave, suddenly thrust into a life of constant danger and trauma, I can only hope that all the little cities around the world would stand up for my kids and their friends. We can be one of those little cities for the children of Gaza, and I think we should be. I want to end with a quote from the poet Rasha Abduhadi. Wherever you are, whatever sand you can throw on the gears of genocide, do it now. If it's a handful, throw it. If it's a fingernail full, scrape it out and throw. Get in the way however you can. The elimination of the Palestinian people is not inevitable. We can refuse with our every breath and action. We must. Thank you.
Thank you. Caitlin Tricomi.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Tricomi, and I live at 25 Whitney Ave. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm also speaking today about my extreme sadness and disappointment in the council's failure to pass or discuss the ceasefire resolution on March 11th. And I echo the council's calls for accountability and transparency from this current administration and ask the council to do the same. I was raised in Beverly and have lived here all my life as a Ward 4 resident. I was a Girl Scout for 8+ years, during which I was taught to make the world a better place and be a sister to every Girl Scout. In 2019, I was awarded my Gold Award, the highest honor in Girl Scouting, and the Beverly City Council passed resolution number 269, honoring myself earning the award. Now, why would the council pass this resolution but not a ceasefire resolution? There were no actionable items that were accomplished with this issue by the council. The values I learned from Girl Scouting in my youth instilled in me to uphold the rights and dignity of all people in every corner of the world. Additionally, as a public health professional and private citizen, my personal and professional values compel me to take a stand against genocide. In 2020, the Beverly City Council passed a resolution declaring racism a public health crisis in Beverly and took action. Members of our community are affected by the council's silence in the face of indiscriminate killing and displacement of their family members in Gaza. Do Palestinian lives matter? Why is Beverly not concerned about the rampant anti-Palestinian racism? To quote President Nelson Mandela, but we know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians. The devastating assault on Rafah continues, where 1 million Palestinians are residing, with the Israeli military ordering tens of thousands of displaced people to leave the southern city as it's being bombed. The UN reports that Gaza's fragile health system is now close to collapse due to airstrikes, a surge in trauma patients, and dwindling supplies of medicine and fuel. Out of 36 hospitals, only 12 are now partially functioning. All to some degree have been destroyed and attacked, which includes direct attacks on ambulances, and the healthcare system is crumbling without enough healthcare providers to care for patients. Dr. Anan al-Bush, a prominent Gazan orthopedic surgeon, died in an Israeli prison with 10 other healthcare providers who were taken away while treating patients at the Al Adwa hospital during the Israeli military ground invasion of the Jabalia refugee camp. Palestinian prisoners group decried his death as systemic targeting of healthcare workers and the healthcare system in Gaza. People with disabilities, whether pre-existing or newly acquired, are among the most vulnerable in Gaza. 57% of WASH, which stands for Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene Facilities, are damaged or destroyed. In Rafah, more than 8 water well facilities are down, causing people, especially children, to drink contaminated water and become seriously ill. 70% of all housing has been destroyed in Gaza, and there's been a deliberate attack on homes in the West Bank. 1 out of 5 people who are starving in the world are now in Gaza. The head of the World Food Program, the UN, and Human Rights Watch are all saying that Israel is deliberately starving millions of people, and half of them are children, all at risk of dying from hunger. And this global crisis resonates locally as well. In Beverly, the need for food and housing has more than doubled, according to a recent report from Beverly Bootstraps, who also presented to this very council. Biden has plans to send more than $1 million in new weapons to Israel, and Beverly taxpayer dollars are going directly to paying for the bombs and bullets that are murdering Palestinians and leveling Gaza, decimating villages and whole families. I've been contacting my state and federal leaders asking for my tax dollars that are funding a genocide instead should be funding affordable housing, healthcare for all, raising the minimum wage, free COVID tests and masks, and more. Part of its resolution is that it is symbolic in nature. When ignored by our federal and state officials, the City Council provides the most direct link. We have to press our elected representatives and uphold the right to exercise free speech. I ask that you do the right thing and unfile the ceasefire resolution, and also think about the legacy you want to leave as a council. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It is now 8:30, and I need to open the public hearing for order number 145, National Grid. And is there anybody here from National Grid to speak on it? You can have the podium. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Kazadi, and I'm representing National Grid at 44 River Street in Beverly. And for this job, we are petitioning to trench and upsize the existing conduits running from an existing handhole on Railroad Ave to the property of 47 Railroad Ave.
Any questions, for Councilor Spang?
Thank you. From the drawing, it looked like it's going to be mostly in the sidewalk, so I just wanted to confirm that you don't anticipate needing to close that road to do the work?
Yeah, all the work is being done on the sidewalk.
Great, thank you. And then, do you know about how long that might take, like a couple days or less?
Just that should be only a day. It's a short span.
Thank you, those are my only questions.
Any other questions from the council? Do we have anybody here from the public that has any questions concerning this order?
Okay. Yeah, so we're replacing existing conduits, underground conduits, from a handhole on the sidewalk on Railroad Ave. So we're upsizing it from 2 inch to 3 inches.
Okay, you're doing it at 47 Rantoul, right?
Ma'am?
Road, I mean?
Ma'am,
Yes.
can you come to the podium, please? And name and address for the record, please?
I live at 1 Moulton Court, and I'm sorry, I just couldn't
You can
understand what you had
come
said.
through me, and then I'll address him for you. That's
Okay,
You're
sorry. I'm just trying to figure out, because I live on Moulton Court, and Moulton Court entrance is exactly opposite where this work is going to be, if it's at 47 Railroad, is what I understood. I just wanted to know what it entailed, because I've seen all around the city, like Broadway has been closed down for I don't even know how long. Is this a very small job, a day? Is it a multiple day? Is it going to impact the entrance and exit out of Moulton Court? Is it going to lose electricity? How long? Those are just the basic questions of what this project entails, that's all.
I think you may be talking about, is this the right one? Okay, okay, super. Could you provide some answers to those, sir?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a very small job, so this is gonna take one day, and we won't need to close any streets. All the work is happening on the sidewalk, so no streets will be closed. It'll just be work on the sidewalk. Yes, the streets will be open.
Electricity will be on.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
That's all I want to know.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from anybody in the public? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to close this public hearing, and I'll refer this back to Public Services. What I'd like to do is open this back up for comments by citizens. If Bonnie Jensen,
Can I just
Is
see
here?
if she went in the hall? You
Sure.
want me to just see if she's still?
no, okay. Then what I'd like to do is start going through some of our meeting things that we need to accomplish until the time, then we'll reopen the second public hearing. First is the acceptance of minutes of previous meetings. We have 4 sets. There's a Public Services Committee meeting for March 11th, 2024, regular City Council meeting for March 18th, 2024, Public Service Committee, May 13th of 2024, regular City Council on April 1st. What I'd like to do is approve on the floor and ask a motion to approve all 4 minutes. Questions? Yes?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask on the March 11th minutes, I think Councilor Feldman's attendance was left out. I know there was a correction, so just wanted to confirm that the final version would include, her comments are, the councilor's comments are included in the minutes, but just not in the attendance list.
Yeah, yep. Yep, we'll make that change. Any other comments, questions for that? All approved? Motion carries 8-0. Communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Okay, order number 149. Dear Honorable City Council, I'm pleased to inform you that the City of Beverly has been awarded a $150,000 grant from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Clean Water State Revolving Fund Grant Program. On November 15th, 2021, President Biden signed the bipartisan infrastructure law that provides 2 new federal grants through CWSRF, Supplemental CWSRF Grant and the Emerging Contaminants Grant. These grants are distributed at the state level via the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Grant funding will be used to develop a robust geographic information systems, GIS horizontal asset database with various asset classes across all utilities, including wastewater. The City of Beverly performs regular inspections and evaluations of sewer, subsections, and associated infrastructure assets, and this grant award will be instrumental in integrating and migrating data, building out a robust vertical asset hierarchy, refining the horizontal assets, defining roles, responsibility, level of service, risks, and priorities across all wastewater-related asset classes. This effort will utilize the city's computerized maintenance management system, CMMS, work order and asset management system, and enhance workforce visibility and engagement. A project team has been established to lead this effort and provide expertise, oversight, and technical assistance as necessary. A $55,000 cash match and $55,000 in-kind engineering public services staff match are required for the grant. The cash match will be provided from the Infiltration and Inflow Research and Development budget, creating a total project cost of $260,000. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A requires both City Council and mayoral approval before any grant, earmark, donation, or gift to the city can be expended for their prescribed purpose. I therefore request the City Council approve this grant by acting on this matter at your upcoming meeting. Thank you, sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
So this will go to Finance and Property.
Order number 150. Dear Honorable City Council, I am pleased to inform you that the City of Beverly has been awarded a $920,000 grant from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Aeronautics to benefit the Beverly Regional Airport. The fencing grant funding will be used to replace fencing around the perimeter of the Beverly Airport as required by the Federal Aviation Administration for safety purposes. No match is required for this grant. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A requires both City Council and mayoral approval before any grant, earmarks, donation, or gift to the city can be expended for their prescribed purpose. I therefore request the City Council approve this grant by acting on this matter at your upcoming meeting on May 20, 2024. Thank you, sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
This will go to Finance and Property.
Order number 151. Dear Honorable City Council, as we approach the end of fiscal year 2024, it is necessary to realign some funding within the operating budget to account for some unplanned operational costs through June 30th and facilitate the purchase of 2 public safety vehicles prior to the close of the fiscal year, helping to ease some budgetary burden for the coming fiscal year 2025 budget. The operational needs relate to a higher than usual level of separation of service costs, of accrued vacation and sick time for various departments, police detail costs associated with early elections, and under-budgeted career incentive pay for police staff. These funds, or the funds that we are proposing to be utilized, are available in reserve accounts as well as underspent areas within the dispatch budget. In addition to the details noted in this communication, there are some smaller areas we are looking to realign as shown on the attached detailed request. This request will require a public hearing prior to any action by the City Council. Proper advertisement of a minimum of 7 days prior to the public hearing will be necessary. Please initiate action regarding this request at your upcoming City Council meeting.
This will go to Finance and Property to set a public hearing.
Order number 152. Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Mr. Christopher Tatnall, 79 North Hancock Street, Lexington, Massachusetts, and Mr. Gerald Blumenstock, 90 Mason Street, Salem, Massachusetts, to serve on the Economic and Community Development Council. Mr. Tatnall is the Executive Vice President of Global Customer Operations for Axelis Technologies, Inc., and Mr. Blumenstock is the Executive Vice President of Engineering for Axelis Technologies, Inc. Both have extensive industry experience that will be an asset to the council, and I respectfully request a waiver of the residency requirement. Their terms are to be effective until December 31st, 2025. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
This will go to Legal. Communications from other city officers and boards.
Order number 153. These are for renewal applications for fortune teller licenses for Leanne Gordon, Laura Nestor, Lillian Perry, and Timothy Reagan.
This will go to Legal.
Order number 154, a new application for a fortune teller license for Liska Bishop Benitez.
This will also go to Legal.
And order 155, a new application for a fortune teller license for Donna Kilgore.
Legal.
Order number 156, a new application for a fortune teller license for Nicole Maribito.
And this will go to Legal.
Order number 157, a new application for a fortune teller license for Jeffrey Van Wyde.
Legal. This will go to Legal.
Order number 158, a renewal application for a hawkers and peddlers license for Nicole Birarelli from Joe's on a Roll.
And this will go to Legal.
Order number 159, Dear Honorable City Council, attached to your consideration and approval is the 2025 regular City Council meeting schedule. Please note the change in November due to the elections. There's a lot of preparation on the day prior to the election and on election day itself, as you all know, is a long day. We appreciate these changes so that we can be focused on having a successful election. Please note as well, for the December 1st meeting, the agenda day will be Tuesday, November 25th at noon because City Hall is closed Thursday and Friday for the Thanksgiving holiday. Thank you, Lisa Kent, City Clerk.
I would ask for a motion on the floor to approve. All in favor? Motion passes 8-0. I'd like to, it's now 8:45, and we can open the public hearing, the second public hearing This has to do with order number 135, National Grid Petition Plan number 306-00267.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Zadi, representing National Grid at 44 River Street. And for this job, we are petitioning to install underground conduits from an existing pole at the corner of Cox Court and Gold Hill Lane, and running the conduits about 105 feet down Gold Hill Lane to a pad transformer on the property of 4-8 Rantoul Street to feed a new building infrastructure.
Any questions? Ms. Spain?
Thank you. Just the same questions for this one. It looks like it's in the sidewalk and along the road a little bit. That lane is right now shut, and it's gonna stay shut until the end of June. So just hoping that you don't need to close the whole road, and trying to figure out if you know about when it might happen and how long it might take.
This will be on the road, so it might shut down half the road.
Okay.
And I'm not really sure how long it'll take to do this, but this should be a couple days.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Any other further questions from counselors? Ms. Bowen?
Thank you. Just to build on and clarify on that point, is this work being coordinated with the existing site improvements and road closures that are ongoing, so that it's completed as part of the same impact on neighbors? Or is it going to be scheduled out a few months and has impacts again?
I think this is going to be scheduled out. It's not going to be under the same, I guess, work that's going on right now.
Then do you have a sense for what time of year or when this might be programmed, and the impact that that might have on the neighborhood?
I don't have an exact time of when this is going to get done, but I'm thinking before, maybe before the fall, I would say.
Yes.
It's my understanding this is to feed a transformer that'll be for the apartment building that's under construction right now?
Yes.
Is that, yeah. So it's kind of related but different.
If I may.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. That is helpful, and it was my assumption. So of course it will be completed before the building is completed. The neighborhood is impacted by that building construction throughout. I was more wondering about, with the ongoing detours and traffic management plans, if this will require a road that is currently detoured and has been well communicated, for that process to happen again later in the summer is more impactful than if it could be coordinated now. So if there's any way to coordinate the work, I think that might be helpful. But it sounds like this might be a later summer project.
Yep.
Anything else on the council? Is there anybody out in the audience that has any questions or concerns with this order? Hearing none, I close the public hearing and refer this back to Public Services. Let's see. So next we have communications, application, and petitions.
Order number 160, notice of availability, public comment draft, immediate response action plan, building 3 area asbestos former variance facility, 150 Sawyer Road.
I make a motion to receive and place on file. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries 8-0. So we have unfinished business from a previous meeting. This has to do with order number 46. I would like to invite Solicitor Williams if she'd like to. This is talking about our amendments to our city ordinances. And the floor is, if you'd like to join us and walk us through this. The floor is yours.
Sure.
Thank you.
Last term, during the fall of 2023, Legal Affairs, over the course of, I think, 6 or 7 meetings, reviewed the ordinances. At the time, it was Councilor Rand, Councilor Rotundo, and Councilor Sweeney, correct? And so in December, they reported out recommended changes. Given that the year was coming to a close, that had to be received and placed on file. and then Councilors Sweeney and Rotundo basically filed the exact same report in January of this year, essentially recommending the changes that Legal Affairs had recommended at the end of last year. So at that point in time, it was retained at the Committee of the Whole, and the proposed changes that you've had since January are now the recommendations of Legal Affairs, and if people have questions about that, I'm happy to answer them.
Super. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Councilors Rotundo and Sweeney for their work on the last term and also bringing this back forward. We can vote on this tonight, vote to approve on the floor tonight. And so I would ask for a motion to approve. Councilor Rotundo.
Mr. Vice President, I'd like to amend proposed amendment in Section 15 by rejecting the proposed striking of language included in Section 15-21B2, 15-41B2, 15-48B2, as well as 15-37, because that particular ordinance with the Human Rights Committee has been sitting in Legal Affairs.
Okay, so there is an amendment to this.
Second.
Any further questions? Councilor Houseman.
Through you, can you summarize the narrative?
Mr. Vice President, through you.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Mr. Hausman, so we had those three ordinances, Clean Action Committee, there was the Veterans Committee, and there is one other one that I don't recall which one it was, where we were talking about the quorum piece in legal affairs most recently, and then as well as the Human Rights Committee. And so what we were talking about is seating them and how to get them aligned with the other committees. But since that the Human Rights Committee sort of kind of percolated up, I'd like to remove that from this in order for us to kind of maybe relook at that whole aspect of it. So the original recommendation was to get those three other committees to align with all the other city committees.
So, Mr. Vice President, through you.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, so your motion refers only to the Human Rights Committee references, or that and what other committees?
So the first three were, I'm gonna let Solicitor Williams make sure I'm not saying incorrectly. I know it's the Citizens Energy Committee, I know it's the Veterans, there is one other one. But where we were talking about the Human Rights Committee, I also want to bring that up as an add-on too, because that was sort of what we've had in legal affairs most recently. So Ms. Old Mixer might be able to give better clarification.
Sure, thank you.
Do I need to turn this?
Thank you.
So the three committees that Councilor Rotundo just referred to, and for 1521 is the Clean Energy Advisory Committee, 1541 is the Open Space and Rec Committee, and 1548 is the Veterans Advisory Committee. As the ordinances currently stand, those three committees have language, excuse me, that allows the quorum to be calculated based on the number of seated members as opposed to the number of seats. The recommendation that came out of Legal Affairs was to strike that language to bring them into consistency with all the other boards and commissions that don't have that language. Since that time, the Human Rights Committee has asked to include language such as these three have. And consequently, there's been some further discussions that have happened, and they should continue to happen to see how we want to handle it as a city with all the boards and committees that something like this would be allowed under state law. So consequently, there just needs to be further discussion. So instead of striking it from these three and then potentially maybe adding it back in later, we're just recommending to maintain the language as it currently stands for these three committees with respect to quorum.
Anything else, Councilor Houseman?
And is that the import of your intended motion? The intended import of your motion?
It is exactly the intent of the motion.
If I could just add a couple more pieces to that. One of the other comments that you, or amendments that you had to the amendments, was to just remove or not accept any changes to the Human Rights Committee as proposed that came out of Legal Affairs because of what's currently sitting in Legal Affairs, so that there's not cross motions to amend the Legal Affairs. Okay, I'll pause there.
Just a follow-up comment,
Yes,
if I
sir.
may.
Yep.
So I spoke with the acting chair of the Human Rights Committee at length today, specifically about this issue. So I'm supportive of the idea of enabling them to continue to have that discussion, but they clearly would like to have, and the acting chair communicated that she could speak for the committee, that they would like to be able to have a quorum consist of a majority of those who are seated, just for the record.
Okay.
May I just add?
Yes, sir.
Reason why I specifically put that last piece with the Human Rights Committee, because it's technically sitting in Legal Affairs right now. So it's, in order for it to not be included in this original recommendation, because this all came out of a more recent conversation, I asked to hold this, because we're gonna continue to discuss this in Legal Affairs, especially now. If I'm correctly speaking that, I think I had mentioned that to Ms. Oldmixon earlier when we were talking about realigning the other three committees.
In the same way.
Correct, but we're already speaking with the Human Rights Committee that's currently sitting in Legal Affairs. Similarly, when we moved on with the Bicycle Pedestrian Action Committee, we moved it out of the ordinance review and did it separately.
Councilor St. Hilaire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
I guess a question for Councilor Rotundo or maybe Councilor Sweeney from Legal Affairs. Trying to understand, what is the problem we're trying to solve for? Do these committees have issues with filling the seats or attendance or both, or what are we trying to do?
It's exactly, so as you're aware, as it's been brought up numerous times, populating the 300-plus volunteer seats seems to be issues. Certain committees that are state statute mandate, we can't do anything, planning, zoning, harbor management, but the ones that are city created, we're able to create ordinances to sort of follow suit of what may be either like the Citizens Advisory Committee, or the Clean Energy Advisory Committee, the veterans, or we populate them where that if there's 9 seats, they have to have a quorum of 5, but what if only 7 are seated, then it's 4. So that's sort of what it came out of more recently than what the original proposal was back in December.
Follow-up question?
Yes, sir.
Is there a difference related to their authority?
Not that I'm aware of, but I would have to really go to the solicitors on
Williams
that. I
or
don't
Ms.
pretend to play an
Olmsted?
attorney on this one.
Ms. Williams?
So, yeah, if I may.
Yes.
So, so the idea, and that's a fair question, and when we, if and when we continue the discussion, that will be the discussion, because state law will not allow to change the formula for certain numbers that are established by state law. The motion that Councilor Rotundo is making right now is just to retain the status quo and not change anything. So the Legal Affairs had recommended making a change, and he's suggesting that we hit the pause button on those changes to have a broader discussion. So just
Thank you. That helps
at a later date, and I don't know if you're being facetious, but
No.
but at a later date, right? Like, so just we're retaining the status quo by accepting his motion, and then as it pertains to the Human Rights Committee, the reason is that currently Order 101 in Legal Affairs has further amendments to the Human Rights Committee ordinance, so it wouldn't make sense. Those are the amendments that in December Legal Affairs recommended. What Councilor Rotundo in the Human Rights Committee ordinance.
So Councilor Rotundo, I'm just trying to understand, are you reversing your position on this? Is that what?
Exactly what
Okay,
I'm
I
rescinding
didn't
my,
understand that
I'm
part.
rescinding what Council Sweeney, I, and Rand, we've suggested, recommended. After further, look, it's gone 6 months later. Other conversations came up with other boards, and it kind of made us say, let's pause and think. And it really, so that it kind of, that's how that decision became those 3 committees.
Thank you for the background. I appreciate that.
Councilor Spang, did you still have? Hold it for another day, okay. Councilor Sweeney?
I'll just add quickly, Mr. Vice President, to Councilor St. Hilaire's point. It's my understanding that the proposed language in a separate order, Order 101A, doesn't conflict with or contradict anything that Legal Affairs was otherwise going to recommend. And this is a process vote, essentially, to allow that one piece of this larger ordinance review to move in a parallel process on its own specific review, and that we can get the rest of these ordinances that we reviewed through the process here. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so we have,
May I
yes,
just,
ma'am.
may I ask for two more housekeeping changes? So one I have up on the screen, I highlighted that owner or occupant that language was set to be stricken. That seems to, I think that's some kind of Scrivener error, because that language needs to be changed. The sentence doesn't make sense if that is stricken. So I would suggest adding to Councilor Rotundo's motion to retain owner and/or occupant in Section 159-19D3. And this is just something in the passage of time in reviewing and getting ready for this that I had flagged. So I would ask that that be added, and then one more, and then we're done. Oh, gotta go to the next one, sorry. This highlighted language, subject to any conditions imposed by the Commonwealth, my suggestion is that language be retained, because currently, in fact, approximately 25 years ago, the state closed all of our flats, and I think that's just a good reminder, leaving in there, you know, for posterity or somebody who's not aware of that we should always be double checking with what the state has already done from a regulatory standpoint. And our flats are actually closed for bait and for shellfishing for human consumption. So,
Thank you.
and that's 232-5, capital A.
Yes, Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. I have one other potential amendment to propose and two other questions, but I'm happy to close the current set of amendments and hold mine if that would be cleanest from a process standpoint.
Sure, yep. So on the current amendment, there's a first and a second. Any further discussion? Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask through you if Councilor Rotundo would be willing to make a friendly amendment to his own motion to include the two housekeeping items suggested by the city solicitor.
Only because you asked, Council Houseman. Otherwise, I probably would have said no. Yes, of course, obviously, I would like to modify my amendment to include the two recommendations by the city solicitor.
Super. Second? Any further discussion? All in favor of the amendments that was done by Councilor Rotundo? Any further questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you. So maybe questions first and then one small point. I know there's been some discussion about, over time, about the Youth Activities Commission. The proposed package of amendments leaves it as is. That body has not had any appointments to it in many years. There is a separate, not structured by ordinance committee that manages the partnership with the Y for youth services. There is a recently announced youth council coming on board from the mayor's office. And so just wanted to hear from committee members or others about leaving in, sort of the decision to leave in the Youth Activities Commission that is defunct versus suggesting to remove it or amend that language to reflect one of the bodies that exists in practice but not on paper.
Any conversation? Councilor Rotundo.
just for clarification, are you looking to remove or just keep status quo on that?
Thank you, if I may. I'm comfortable leaving it in. I think it's a commission that we should appoint people to. But I know there was a lot of discussion about the structure of commissions and multiple member bodies in general, and a number of proposals suggested in this package. And so just wanted to clarify that that was an intentional choice, or I think I'm comfortable with it as it is, but it's also an oddity.
I'm going to let Solicitor Williams, we did have a lot of conversation, but I'll let her articulate.
Sure. My memory, and the minutes are the official record, is that there was some discussion about this multiple member body. And I think the concept of removing it is pretty significant policy discussion, notwithstanding the fact that currently it doesn't seem to be populated. And at that point in time, it was, I think the sense I got is that Legal Affairs believed it was sort of beyond the scope of the undertaking that it was faced with at that point in time. And so no changes were made, which doesn't mean it doesn't warrant a discussion in more detail, this year.
Yes. Councilor Sweeney?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The only thing I'll add is, if I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure Mr. Doig, who I know was here earlier, came to speak to us about a handful of these commissions that are under his umbrella, and this was one of the ones that he mentioned had been active in the past, hadn't been recently, was benefit, there was value when it was active, and so it was kind of a leave it and see how the course of some of the other groups that you had mentioned play themselves out. That was my recollection. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And that's all helpful, and so I don't have any additional changes to propose there. Another thing that I know had a lot of discussion in Legal Affairs last term was the Article 115.8, adding in some language around, or clarifying some language around residency requirements, age, and being a registered voter. There was, discussion about not wanting to limit the sort of level of talent we can pull in from across the city for people who may be below the age of 18, may not be registered voters for a number of reasons, and the sort of pros and cons of that. And so I was just hoping for a final recap of where the language landed before we proceed with that.
So I can do that because I read the minutes recently, and obviously Councilors Sweeney and Rotundo were the members of the committee, so I will defer to them and their point of view. But the minutes reflect that there was a discussion, and just so everybody knows, the status quo, the current language, is that there's a requirement to be a resident and a registered voter of the city. And so there was a discussion about removing the registered voter requirement completely. And I think at that point in time, there was a discussion. It didn't go to a motion. But the consensus at that point in time was to leave it, but that was not an official motion. I think there was appetite on the subcommittee to remove that requirement and have it be just a residency requirement. And my understanding is from the administration that there may be an interest in continuing that discussion or revisiting that decision or that language again to remove that barrier, the registered voter requirement. And so what the committee decided to do was to make a more explicit, it's paragraph 4, waiver section, to make it clear that you can obtain a waiver from the requirement of being a resident and a registered voter. We also, what they did was they added a requirement that you be at least 18 years old, because if we remove the registered voter requirement or waive it, you still may want somebody to be 18 years old, right? And so right now, the registered voter requirement, by definition, means that you have to be 18. So this is, after much discussion, where things ended up. I do think there's an appetite from the administration, and my memory was there was an appetite, especially I think from Council Rand, to remove the registered voter requirement.
Yes.
Thank you. That's helpful. I'm comfortable with the language as it is and also share that appetite for removing barriers to service. So given sort of how the package of proposals has come together, I don't think it's helpful to propose a further amendment tonight and go into the weeds on the topic. But do you want to share, I think it would be helpful to tackle that this term. I know it's come up separately in the Human Rights Committee language, and so maybe through that process, we can land on something that we could then incorporate as an ordinance amendment separately. And then my last question was on Chapter 33, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. There's a proposal that the finance director be included by ordinance as one of the trustees. There have been a few things that have come up over the last couple of years about when city staff are appointed members of committees versus sort of observers or staffing committees. To me, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is, it's a relatively small board, and it's a potentially really important tool for the city. It hasn't been, it hasn't had a ton of funding, so it hasn't been a particularly heavily used tool to date. But to my mind, particularly with the mayor already being written in as a member of the committee, currently we have both the finance and planning directors appointed to that body. So my read on this is that it's a goal of sort of reflecting the current reality. But personally, I think this is a board where having more citizen, resident, neighborhood representation would be helpful, and so would propose that we reject those two small changes of adding and the finance director and removing one of the trustees at this time. If that's a really important change from the administration's perspective, I think it's worth bringing on its own, just as we discussed adding the Commissioner of Public Services to the Building Commission, to talk through that one sort of on its merits. If there was more discussion about that than I remember from the previous round, I'm happy to hear, but would like to add that amendment on the table to strike the proposed addition of and the finance director and keep the language as one of the trustees.
So there's a motion to amend this section to remove the finance director and whom else?
Sort of keep the current language rather than
Keep the current language and change the language.
the proposed change.
Second for discussion. Okay, I'll open it up for discussion. Councilor Sweeney?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I don't recall there being extensive discussion in subcommittee about this one proposal. I'd be happy to hear from the solicitor's office if there's a larger rationale, but my read of the proposal was essentially the goal being to add the expertise that would come from the finance director sitting as one of the trustees, given his or her understanding of the larger financial picture. Certainly, your point is well taken, Councilor Bowen, about preserving the majority of the composition of the board being citizen representatives. And so I am not wedded to this language. I would certainly be willing to vote in favor of some sort of amendment. My recommendation would be, if there is a desire to only have one of those 5 seats be a member of the administration, that the language be flexible as to say the mayor or his or her designee, something that would essentially allow, if the mayor so chooses, the finance director to still be a member of this board, given the perspective that they would bring.
Councilor Feldman?
administration seems like an improper balance. And I was going to suggest that it be changed to the mayor or the finance director shall serve as one of the trustees or an appointee. But that would be, I would welcome that change if there is not any further rationale for making 2/5 of a board the administration.
Council St. Hilaire.
Could the solicitor speak to the scope and role of this particular board? What role do they play right now?
Well, and I would review the language of the ordinance with you. It sets out the authorities and the responsibilities. So, to accept and receive, whether real or personal, by gift, grant, devise, or transfer from any person, firm, corporation, or other public or private entity, including without limitation, grants or funds or other property tendered to the trust in connection with the provisions of any zoning ordinance or bylaw, or any ordinance or other bylaw, and, you know, it goes on and on. This was passed in, I don't know what year it was. Excuse me? Yeah. So I don't know what the status of the finances are. I don't know what is held, how much is held in trust right now.
I mean, I would tend to agree with Councilor Sweeney that adding a finance director to a board like this seems to make sense to me. I also look at a board of 5 people and say maybe there's room for more, but, you know, I haven't really dug into this particular item. So certainly open that discussion.
I mean, I would, if I may,
Yes, ma'am.
just say, you know, this conversation happened 6 or 7 months ago at this point. So I don't remember the specifics of the discussion in legal affairs. I do think that the finance director serves on the trust because of their expertise and their knowledge with respect to the city's finances, and I don't know how much is being held in trust right now, so that's something that is beyond the scope of what I am prepared to discuss tonight. I don't think amending this, you know, at this point, well, I will just say this is the product of something that was discussed months ago at this point, and after several meetings, and that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Rotundo.
I just want to add, I mean, in regards to the finance director, remember, we have trustees, we have the Lynch Park trustees that is managed by our finance director. He oversees funds that have been there for years, right? So when this was first discussed and mentioned, it was really sort of the continuous of this particular fund, although it's still new, going further, and there's not maybe a lot of money, but it makes the sense to have the person who manages the money. And that sort of kind of was that discussion, to having the finance director have a part of that board. I understand where there's the concerns of the 2/5 of the board going to the administration, but the idea of having the finance director on there is he or she is the person who really does manage the money, especially some of the older funds that still stand in existence.
Councilor Houseman.
Like Councilor St. Hilaire, I haven't had a chance to look at this recently. It's certainly not in any depth, so it's somewhat problematic for me to sort of, on the floor, accept this. Although I think the points that have been made by both Councilor Feldman and Councilor Bowen are both good points, but it does appear to be a fairly, part of the reason it's so small is it appears to be a fairly technical board dealing with finances. So I like Councilor Sweeney's suggestion, and would really like to know more about the work of the committee before expanding it to citizens, although I think in principle that's always a good thing. One question of clarification, though, and I'll open it to anyone who has a stronger memory than I do. We changed the zoning ordinance, I believe, so that rather than developers being able to put money into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, to basically buy their way out of having affordable housing on site. We changed it so they couldn't do that, I believe. And therefore, it's not clear to me how much activity, will be going forward. And so I'd welcome the input of someone to help refresh my memory on that point and how it relates to the idea of Councilor Sweeney's specific suggested amendment.
So
Counselor Spain.
Yep, thanks. My understanding is that the payment of a fee in lieu was applied to condos. So if people are building a project with ownership condos, then they can either include the affordable units as condos that get sold, or they can make a payment in lieu to the Affordable Housing Trust. And I believe that's still on the books right now. The part that the council changed was for rental units, where you could have created them on-site, the inclusionary ones, or off-site. And so there is no longer the ability to do off-site rental units. They have to be on-site. But the condo or purchased units, fee in lieu is still on the books and valid right now.
Counselor Vaughn.
Thank you. Yes, that's my understanding as well. And affordable housing trusts in general as a structure can be funded a number of ways. So that's the channel that I think has been the only to date sort of funding stream in. But there can be multiple funding streams in and can be multiple uses of those funds. And the Board of Trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund helps determine how those funds are used. In some communities, ARPA funds were allocated to affordable housing trusts to acquire property or provide rental or mortgage assistance to people who were struggling through the impacts of the pandemic. In other communities, Community Preservation Act funds are requested for the Affordable Housing Trust. I believe the most recent activity from our Affordable Housing Trust was to contribute to one of the Harbor Light Homes projects funding gaps. And I believe currently we have approved appointments for the mayor, the finance director, and the planning director to all sit on the current Affordable Housing Trust Fund board, along with 2 residents who we recently reappointed.
Counselor St. Hilaire.
Yeah, I would just suggest, I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish here with this, and I would suggest we move the question and move on.
Yes.
Yes, if I can just clarify, my goal is to keep the language status quo rather than make a change tonight that's not fully understood by the council.
So I have an amendment on the floor that's been seconded. Any further questions? Sure, the specific motion was to change the membership of the board as far as, not the membership, but to take out the finance director?
Yes, just to clarify, my amendment is to remove this recommendation from the package of things we'd be voting on, which in effect would leave this section of our ordinances as it is currently, to ideally then be taken up separately, since it seems like there's plenty of room for discussion, which could land in the same place. I'm not saying I wouldn't support the finance director having a permanent seat on that committee. I just don't feel this is the right way to do it. So we'd rather leave it as is and take that one up separately like we are with the Human Rights Committee.
So, the amendment was to leave the language as it was? Yes.
Just for a point of information, whatever the term is, Mr. Vice President, it looks like the finance director is already sitting on the Affordable Housing Trust. Just mentioning that Ms. Wynn was a member brought to mind the thought that maybe there's other
Mr. Chair,
members
can we
of the
move the
staff.
question?
Sure. So, can I have some help here for a minute? So we had an amendment and a second as far as to make this change. So I guess so all in favor? All opposed? Motion. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Lost.
What's that? Yeah, so the motion's denied 3-5. And any further discussion on the whole package? Counselor Houseman.
At the risk of the wrath of my colleagues, I'd like,
My foot's falling asleep.
I'd like to make a motion along the lines of what Counselor Sweeney proposed, that the language read, the mayor, how did you put it, and his designated,
Or.
It was or his or her
Or his-
designee, but it does look like the mayor is appointing city staff to the trustees already, which I think is a helpful piece of information.
so you started to say something about the finance director is already serving on this,
At least according to the city website,
so effectively,
that
it's already happening.
that's what it appears to be.
Well, I also would like to move this along, so I'm going to make I'm going to make a motion, and it'll go hopefully right along, one way or another. The language read, the mayor and, it's not and or his or her, I'm not sure what the specific.
What is your goal? What are you trying to achieve?
The mayor or his designee shall serve as one of the trustees.
So you,
In
then
the-
you,
in the
then
proper-
both people can't, then the mayor and the finance director can't
Do
be.
one or the other. Yes, the mayor or his designee. Was that was your intention, I believe.
Yes. So there's a motion on the floor. Do I have a
If
second
there's
to
no second,
discuss?
it dies, so,
There's no second, so
okay.
we're going to move
It
on.
dies.
So I recommend a motion to approve as amended, order number 46.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 8-0. Thank you, Solicitor Williams.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Okay, motions and orders.
Trustee.
For final passage, Order 101, for proposed amendments to the city ordinances. Like to read you? Thank you.
So this is a Order 101A, a proposed amendment to the city ordinance. Let me find the legal ad. Proposed City of Beverly Ordinance, Article 2, 15-37, Human Rights Committee summarized as follows. 1, add the city's Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Belonging as a committee member. 2, eliminate term limits and residency requirements for committee members appointed by virtue of their status as a city or school employee. 3, clarify that an individual who has served for 6 consecutive years may be appointed again after a break in service. 4, further define qualifying experience for all members. 5, eliminate the registered voter requirement for eligibility for service. 6, allow for 2 members to be under the age of 18 as long as they are at least 16 years old. And 7, additional minor edits for the purpose of modernizing the language. The full text of Order 101 can be found at the City Clerk's Office, 191 Cabot Street, Beverly, Mass., Monday through Wednesday, 8:30 to 4:30, Thursday, 8:30 to 7:30, and Friday, 8:30 to 1 p.m. Also available online, beverlyma.gov. Ordinance to take effect upon publication and final passage, and this was published Friday, May 10th.
Yeah, so just to go with this, so tonight we're only voting on the proposed changes to 1537A3, which is eliminating the registered voter requirements and allowing for up to 2 members under the age of 18. Okay, because I know there's still some held in legal.
Correct.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve. 1,
Just as a point of order,
yes.
didn't we vote on this at our
This is-
last council meeting?
So this is the final
second.
passage. This is the final passage.
passage.
Yeah, this is final passage.
Yeah.
Any questions? All in favor? All opposed? Passes 8-0. And then order We have vote for final passage tonight also is Order 121, the proposed amendment to Chapter 270 of the city ordinances for parking.
Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of, by the Council of the City of Beverly as follows. 1, prohibit parking on the south side eastbound direction of LP Henderson Road from Cabot Street to the intersection of San Fonso Drive. And 2, prohibit parking on the north side westbound direction from the intersection of Cabot Street and LP Henderson Road to the entrance to the bathhouse, where said distance is approximately 190 feet. The full text of Order 121 can be found at the City Clerk's Office, 191 Cabot Street, Beverly, Monday to Wednesday, 8:30 to 4:30, Thursday, 8:30 to 7:30, and Friday, 8:30 to 1. Also available online at beverlyma.gov. Ordinance to take effect upon publication and final passage, and this was published Friday, April 26th.
So this is a vote for final passage for tonight. So looking for a motion to approve? Any further questions? All in favor? Motion carries 8-0. So I'd like to also make a motion for a brief 15-minute break for committee work. All in favor? Super. Finance will stay here in chambers. Legal will go to the committee room. Services, we're at the bench.
And property. So Councilor Sweeney, I think it's just you and I tonight, and we'll have a short agenda. We'll take up orders 149, 150, and 151. 2 of those are our grants that we've received. So I'd ask Ms. Barrett, who's with us tonight, our grants director, maybe to start with order 149. This is the grant from Mass DEP on the clean water. I guess it's a geographic information system. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Catherine Barrett, Director of Grants. I worked on this grant with Eric Barber, our Assistant Commissioner of Engineering and Public Services. He did the heavy lift on the expertise for the narrative. This grant is for $150,000. It's a total of $260,000, I believe, with the match and the in-kind. And it's going to be for an asset management plan, specifically for our wastewater management. And I can read some of the verbiage that we used in the grant application. I think you have a description in the letter as well.
We did.
Which I wrote.
We did.
So Beverly aims to bolster its current asset management plan, which is currently in its preliminary stages of development. This plan will focus specifically on the wastewater asset classes to further refine horizontal assets, develop vertical assets, pump station hierarchy, and provide a framework for how other functional groups will be developed in the future. This proposal will develop a framework to allow the city to tie historical records, inspectional, and condition-based data to our assets to make data-driven decisions about our asset condition and drive future preventative maintenance, repair tasks, and capital improvements. The proposal will also incorporate steps to ensure our data sets have the appropriate attributes and fields to properly handle our historical data, as well as provide a framework for how we capture data in the future. And I think it goes into some of the CMMS. We have partnered with Dewberry on this, and we've used Dewberry specifically for our sanitary sewer expertise for approximately 15 years. So we've already got a good partner in place, as well as an internal team assembled of about 10 people, including many folks in our water department, to work on this project.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Questions, Counselor Sweeney?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Barrett, for that description.
You're welcome.
Just to make sure I understand the two pieces of the city match, that 55,000 in cash and the 55,000 in the in-kind engineering and public services staff. So starting with that piece, the latter, is it money that will come from the engineering budget that had already been allocated for this type of work that will go toward this specific, the development of this specific system?
Are you talking about the cash match or the in-kind?
The question is essentially both, so if you could provide a little more information.
So the in-kind, we actually estimate the amount of hours that 10 staff will work on this particular project, and that is a total of about 55,000.
Okay.
The other 55,000 is coming out of a very specific fund that I wasn't really familiar with. The I can't remember the name of it. It's in the letter. I highlighted it in the letter because I had not.
Apologize if I missed it.
I think it's towards the end of the letter. I actually don't have the letter in front of me. It's a specific account that deals with
Got it.
sanitation and wastewater.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All set?
Yes.
Counselor Sweeney? Okay, and I also want to acknowledge and thank Mr. Spillieri, our conservation agent, for being here as well. Did you have anything you wanted to add on this particular item? No? You're good? I'm sorry.
That's actually
So,
that's our
Ms.
airport
Barrett,
director, yeah.
I think we're all set on this particular item. I would
Okay.
entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. And then order number 150, Ms. Barrett, this is the Mass Aeronautics grant for $920,000 for Beverly Airport for fencing.
Yes, I'm going to call up our airport director, Gabriel
you.
Hannafin, and he did a terrific job on this grant, a large amount of money for the perimeter fencing, and I'll let him take it from there.
Thank you, counselors. So yeah, this is for perimeter fencing at the airport. As you can appreciate, we like to keep our airport protected, mostly from wildlife, but also any other threats to the airport. And our perimeter fencing plays a really big role in that. There's about 7,000 linear feet of fencing, which isn't the entire perimeter fencing. This is primarily on the Danvers side of the airport, but that's in really rough condition. It's not gotten any sort of maintenance or repair in several years. So the state has money available to fix fencing and take on this project. So $920,000, there's no local share to that. That's 100% state funded with FY24 monies.
And is that common for us to get state money sent to Beverly that, you know, I noted the work is being done on Danvers. Is that common for us to do that?
For the airport, yes, since the city of Beverly owns the entirety of the airport, yeah.
Thank you. Counselor Sweeney, any questions, comments?
No, just one comment, appreciate the work to secure this funding.
Yeah,
Both
of
of you
course.
guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second, and all in favor? Aye, and approved 2-0. Thank you both for being here. Okay, order 151, this is an order that came to us tonight, a request to realign some funding for the purchase of 2 public safety vehicles. I see we have our our fire chief here, Mr. O'Connor. Do you have any comments on this particular item? We're going to set a public hearing tonight, but while you're here, anything to speak to?
This will just replace one of the last pickup trucks that we have to replace, a 2009 that we use to shuttle equipment, tools back and forth from fire scenes, people, and more importantly, one of the biggest things is a trailer. We have a big DEP trailer, oil spill trailer, so it's F-350, it's a bigger truck.
Okay, we'll have more opportunity to discuss this at the public hearing. Thank you, Chief, for being here. Counselor Sweeney, any questions or comments?
I'll hold them until the public hearing.
Okay, and entertain a motion to set a public hearing on order 151 on June 3rd at 8 p.m.
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Approve 2-0. The other items, I think, Counselor Sweeney, we're going to set a separate finance and property subcommittee meeting to go into some of these a little bit more in depth in how they relate to one another. So for tonight, I think we'll adjourn. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved. We are.
We're going to call the council back to full session, and we're going to get reports from committees.
Okay, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom was referred the matter regarding a grant for $150,000 from Mass DEP, Clean Water State Revolving Fund Grant Program to be used to develop Geographic Information Systems Asset Database, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the request.
Question or comments? The question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order 150, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom was referred the matter regarding a grant for $920,000 from Mass DOT Aeronautics to replace fencing around the perimeter of the Beverly Airport as required by the FAA for safety purposes, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the request.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order 151, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom was referred the matter regarding a request to realign funding in the operating budget to account for some unplanned operational costs through June 30th and facilitate the purchase of 2 public safety vehicles to ease some budgetary burden for the upcoming FY25 budget. Have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Set the public hearing for June 3rd at 8 p.m.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and setting the public hearing. All those in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Okay, the order number 65, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom is referred the matter regarding a new livery license application for Alba Boston Limo LLC located at 283 Cabot Street, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the license be denied.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All in favor? All opposed? Yeah, favor denied, I'm sorry. Yeah, favor denied, yep. Motion carries 8-0, sorry about that.
The Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom was referred the matter regarding 4 renewal applications for fortune teller licenses for Leanne Gordon, Laura Nestor, Lillian Perry, and Timothy Reagan, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the reappointments.
Questions or comments? The question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All those in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order number 154, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom was referred the matter regarding a new application for a fortune teller license for Liska Bishop Benitez, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the appointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order number 155, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom was referred the matter regarding a new application for a fortune teller license for Donna Kilgore, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the appointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order number 156, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom is referred the matter regarding a new application for a fortune teller license for Nicole Marabito, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the appointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order 157, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom was referred the matter regarding a new application for a fortune teller license for Jeffrey Van Wyde, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the appointment.
Questions or comments? The question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order number 158, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom was referred the matter regarding a renewal application for a hawkers and peddlers license for Nicole Biarelia from Joe's Honor Roll, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows. Recommend the council approve the reappointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order number 146, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom is referred the matter regarding a request for approval to host a block party on Cabot Street from Pond Street to Federal Street and a waiver of Section 113-2, alcohol in public places, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows: receive and place on file.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of receiving this in place on file. All those in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Okay, and Public Services, the Committee on Public Service, Order 135, the Committee on Public Services, to whom was referred the matter regarding National Grid Petition Plan 306-00267, Goat Hill Lane, to install 105 feet plus or minus of 2 or 4 PVC conduits, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows: recommend the petition be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order 138, the Committee on Public Services, to whom was referred the matter regarding an appointment for Dominic Copeland to serve on the trustees of the Beverly Library, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows: recommend the council approve the appointments.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the adoption, the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order 139, the Committee on Public Services, to whom was referred the matter regarding an appointment for Paul Willenbrock and Marilyn Hurricane Osborne to serve on the Commission on Disabilities, recommend the council approve, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows: recommend the council approve the appointments.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.
Order 145, the Committee on Public Services, to whom is referred the matter regarding National Grid Petition 30953-605 Railroad Ave, have considered said matter and beg leave to report as follows: recommend the petition be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0. That's it? Awesome. Good. Are there any announcements? Councilor Rotundo.
Just one. I know the mayor mentioned it earlier, but just a reminder that there is the Aubert Resiliency meeting tomorrow night up at Ayers Elementary School, 40 Woodland Ave, between 6:30 and 8 p.m. Thank you.
Any others? Other than that, we have, our next meeting is June 3rd. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Danielle.
There will be Memorial Day services on Sunday, May 26th at the Beverly Farms Cemetery and then at Independence Park. You can look up the times online. I know Independence Park is at 11, and I don't remember what time in the farms.
And also, I do know to piggyback on that, they are looking next week for some help with doing some of the flagging at some of the cemeteries, this week. And if anybody has a chance to help out, there's also dates, times, and locations on the website. And they would really appreciate everybody's help. Thank you. Other than that, I'd make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Motion carries 8-0.